So welcome again to the Study Abroad Alumni panel. We're glad you could join us, and we're super thankful for all of our returnees who are here to share their experiences and stories from abroad. And the agenda for today is we'll start with a showcase speaker, Sophia, who will talk about her time in Spain and France. And then we'll do a panel with our other wonderful returnees, and we'll end with some Q&A where you'll get a chance to ask any questions you may have. I think we can get started. Sophia, if you're ready to go, we'll pass it on to you.
Absolutely. Hi again, my name is Sophia. I use she, hers, they, ya pronouns. And like it was mentioned before, I studied abroad in Spain and France. It was, needless to say, some of the most transformative times of my life. I will always want people to go abroad. And if you have any questions, any doubts, always bring them up because the experience is worth it. So if any hesitations or questions come up, please let us know. We're going to be more than happy to help you out. So I wanted to kind of just start off with my experience and my story, how that kind of came about. I always recommend, a lot of us here have done more than one time abroad. And so we kind of I finessed with my credits. I came in with a little bit more, so I was able to kind of take advantage of that. So I highly recommend that if you're in a position to do that, talk to your advisor, see what plans academically fit for you so you can take advantage of those programs that are available. So I wanted to get off campus as soon as possible. So I knew I wanted to go to Spain because for me at that point, I speak fluent Spanish. I'm Mexican, have dual citizenship, and I kind of did want something easy. And I always want to remind people that that's okay. It is okay to think that that is going to be easy, because being fluent in Spanish didn't just make it easier, but I did want that to facilitate my time there so I could focus on other things. So again, that language was in my head and I wanted to take advantage of it. So I highly recommend, again, if you're bilingual, trilingual, take advantage of those things and see what you can do while you're over there. So I went to Usd Madrid first semester of my sophomore year. I worked at the USD front desk there, and that was awesome. I also decided to not do homestay and really kind of take this independent time for myself and kind of see how far I could push myself in this different country here. So I lived in an apartment, which again, I have some insight into whether you're deciding homestay or apartment. I did both. So I kind of got a taste of the pros and cons of both of them. I did find that I grew very independent, loved being able to go get my groceries and kind of like have that space to myself was very necessary for me during that time. So again, I really do recommend looking into that if that's something that calls to you. And so there was a lot of growth during that time. I made sure that because I knew Spanish that I took advantage of it. In Spain, there's nothing but little tapas bars all over the streets. So I made sure that I had a local one. I knew the bartender, he knew me, he knew what drink I wanted, he knew, and like all those things. I had a little community. Like I remember I would get out of the metro and the usual squad would be hanging here. The squad is like 60-year-olds, right? Like it's a community of like adults that live in Spain. It wasn't like the usual crowd. And I really loved being integrated into that and feeling that community. It was amazing. They'd ask me how school was and I'd interview them for my journalism classes. So it was a really cool connection I got to make. Despite not having the homestay, I was still able to kind of create a faux family of like my neighborhood community there. So that was a beautiful experience and I miss it every day. I came back then, so to USD, and then completed my junior year. And then I decided that I also had some time and I really wanted to go back abroad. If you guys I do international relations. Like I know that my calling is to not be in the States. So if you're anything like me, you would look for those opportunities. And so I did, and I went to Aix-en-Provence. This time I wanted to challenge myself a little bit more. I took French in high school. I took it for 2 years at USD and then kind of slacked off on it. So it was like intermediate. So don't be scared if you go into this country not knowing anything or being really shaky and not knowing how to do it. It's also so much fun and part of the process. So I went to France, had a homestay, had a roommate, complete polar opposite experience from what I was had in Spain. Um, and it was marvelous. Like my homestay mother is like my grandmother to this day. She doesn't speak a lick of English, but we sure tried and like got through with my French and Spanish. Like we made it work. I was fed every night, so we made it, you know. And I learned so much French because of that, and my confidence grew. And if you're trying to learn a language, there's no better way than to just go and put yourself there. 100%. I went from probably beginners level to intermediate, having conversations with French folks at bars. Like I still have my community of French friends that I talk to. Like, so again, those are the things that you want from these experiences. It's scary. I did make a fool out of myself various times, saying things incorrectly, um, saying probably like very bad things. Like, of course, like the classic slip ups of saying what you're not supposed to say, anyways. But we made it through. If you laugh it off, you grow and you learn. And I, I always recommend, I always have a little notebook with me. I'd always jot it down. I'd always write down what I messed up and keep it with me for the next time. And it really did help. Um, I think there's so much merit to these opportunities. I talk a lot about it of like the highs and how it was wonderful and all this, but the reality is also it's life changing because it's hard. It comes with a lot of challenges, adversity, and differences that I was not prepared for. But if you give yourself a chance to take the risk, reach out to your peers. If you feel something is wrong or not okay, always vocalize it to your administrators and make sure that you have a group. I think that was my saving grace, was that the community at the USD Madrid Center was always very responsive. If anyone had an issue or if a homestay was not acting appropriate, to disclose that right from the beginning, and that you would have support from the beginning to the end. And it shows through. And in those places where it didn't exist, you share where there's students. I was a part of those groups that made sure that that community was going to be there and initiated that to make sure our community is safe while we're over there as well. So never hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or doubts about what's going on, if the situation isn't clear. A lot of things get lost in translation, but a lot of times it's also very clear. So if those things come up, there's always someone to reach out to. You're never alone when you're abroad, even when it feels like you're out there. Um, I went from being super alone and then having a whole like homestay and everything. And both those times, there was those feelings of I'm alone. But at the end, there was always a community around and someone there to help if I let myself be helped by them as well. So um, definitely recommend. It was the most life-changing thing. I went back to France afterwards to work at that same university and actually started their first like POC bio. It was like the longest acronym in the world. And it was just like, there wasn't a space for any of us that were, none of our Black, brown, or like trans kids had like a space for us to be abroad. So we made sure that those spaces existed afterwards. So again, I never want that to be something that keeps students from going out there. I know it was scary for a lot of us, especially if we didn't have the funds or the means to just go. It was more of a responsibility. So I get that. And again, there is a community of us here to reach out to and help you with any of those things. And that is, I guess, where I'll leave it to and pass it off to the panelists part.
Thank you so much, Sophia. That was wonderful. But yeah, I'd like to give a chance to the remaining panelists to introduce themselves. And as you guys do, I think it'd be great if you can just touch a little bit on, why did you pick your specific program? And just, tell us a few sentences about your experience going abroad.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
My name is Vanessa. I'm currently a senior at USD, so I'll be graduating this spring. I went to the USD Madrid Center, like Sophia did, and I went in fall of 2019, so right before COVID hit. And I decided to go there because a ton of my friends were going, and I knew that I needed that support system with me when I was going to be abroad and away from my family and away from something that I was so used to. So that was a big decision factor for me when I was going abroad, especially because I do have anxiety. And I was kind of worried about being alone in a foreign country by myself. But I'm glad I went to USD in Madrid, and it was a lot of fun. I did a homestay, and my host parents were the most amazing people ever. They were so cute. They made sure that we got integrated into Spanish culture. The first night that we were there, she taught us how to open a fan and close a fan with one hand. She made us sangria. She made us paella. She walked us around the neighborhood. She made sure we knew where our bus stop was, where our metro stop was. And she just made us feel so comfortable and welcome. So if you get the chance, I definitely recommend the Madrid Center, but I am a little biased. I think it's the best place to go.
It is awesome. I do recommend it too. It really is really cool.
I can go next. Hi everybody, my name is John. I'm a current junior, and I did intercession in Japan during the winter of, or during January 2020. So right before COVID hit, and then I flew straight from my intercession to my semester in Dunedin, New Zealand. So that was spring of 2020. So I was there for about 2 months before I got sent home. But I still feel like I got a lot out of both programs. I really, really enjoyed them. I was originally supposed to do my intercession in Hong Kong, but it got moved to Japan after the political instability there. The reason I'd wanted to go to Hong Kong is because I'd been taking Chinese for a lot of my life and I wanted an opportunity to practice, but Japan was, I think, incredibly rewarding. And I'm a really big outdoors enthusiast. I love backpacking and all things hiking related, and New Zealand is world famous for that. So that's a lot of the reason for why I also wanted to go there.
Introduce myself and follow up that because I went to Dunedin as well. My name's Allie and I graduated last year, so 2020, working in the real world right now. But I did intercession in Florence my sophomore year and then chose Dunedin for spring of 2019, and a little different for me, but I wanted to go somewhere by myself, completely like throw myself out there into the wild, which definitely did that. I didn't know anybody going my time, which is what I wanted. I made so many friends. I actually had one of my friends from Chicago fly out in July and we did a road trip to like 10 different national parks after I graduated. So made lifelong friends, might live with her in a year. So it was a great experience. I think New Zealand, they do school a lot different there. I feel like you have to be very self-motivated. You could do, no homework for a month and then you got to study for like a week. So it's really different. You had to adjust, but the people there are incredible. I made lifelong friends. And if anybody is looking to go somewhere where they don't know anybody, happy to chat about that and kind of how you navigate that. I mean, how I'm more of an introverted person. So, how I made friends there and all that kind of stuff. I'm happy to chat more about that. Also, if you're like outdoors enthusiasts, I guess me and John are your people.
I can go next. So I'm Josephine and I graduated, same as Allie, from USD last year in 2020. And I went abroad spring 2019 to semester at sea, which is probably different from a lot of people's experiences because, well, you live on a ship for 4 months and then you stop off at 11 different countries. So I technically, I guess, studied abroad in 11 different countries, but it wasn't for a prolonged time. And the reason I chose semester SC was literally because I didn't know what country to go to. So I figured I'd go to them all. And it was across Asia, Africa, and Europe, were the continents that I went to, which is super fun. Yes, the thing about USD is that something special about USD is that it offers this program, because I know a lot of students on the semester SC program actually had to take gap years or gap semesters to be able to participate. But luckily at USD, they make it pretty easy for you to join and for your courses to align with the ones at semester SC, so you're not really wasting time and you can still get credits, because I know some of my friends weren't able to get credits for any of their classes because their schools didn't support staff, which is really, really awesome. And overall, I think something that sets semester SC apart from the other ones is that when people go to study abroad, they're usually like one person from their school embarking on this journey, whereas at semester at SC, you're essentially living on a floating campus where everyone's part of the same program. So it's kind of like a campus on its own where you get to go travel. So yeah, it was super fun.
I can go next. I'm Lexi. I studied abroad in Rome in spring of 2020. So kind of like John, I was there for about 2 months, but I still did get a good feel of the city and what it was like to be there. I was doing the dual degree program. So if you haven't heard about that, basically I was going to double major. I was going to have 2 years in Rome and 2 years at USD. Obviously that didn't happen, but I still really enjoyed my time while I was there. I think probably the most unexpected thing that occurred while I was there was how many Americans were there. Obviously, Rome is like a huge tourist city, and I just figured, okay, if I'm in Italy, they're going to be speaking Italian. It's going to be super cultured. And there was that, definitely. But when you go to an American university, there's a lot of Americans. And then probably the thing that I spent hours on YouTube researching that was very accurate was just like the most stereotypical Italian culture. Like it was so, the architecture was so gorgeous, and I'm not even really an architecture museum kind of person, but it was just like phenomenal. The food was insane. I'm sure most of us love Italian food. That's the place to go. Again, I'm biased, but you should go. And then of course, like the city itself, the weather, the people and whatnot is really similar to San Diego in some ways. So if you are the type to get homesick, or if you are really anxious, or you have trouble making friends, I would say it's a good place to be, because it's similar to San Diego, but it's different enough that you get that foreign experience. So I would recommend it.
Hi everyone, my name is AJ. I'm an international business and marketing major. I'm a senior at USD. This is a very unpopular opinion, but I went to Japan actually in the intersession before in 2020, so in January, and I wasn't really set on going to Japan. I was literally just trying to find a class that fit great in my schedule. Hopefully y'all feel the same. Some people are feeling the same way. And I just didn't want to go to like a super like touristy place in my opinion. So I was just looking and I was like, oh, this class looks cool and it's in Tokyo and Kyoto. So that's where I went. And I guess if anything, I just want to say that's okay. You don't have to be like super set on like where you want to go. It like anywhere you go, you're going to go and explore a different culture, different people, and you're going to have a whole new experience. So it's totally fine to be a little lost in the sauce of like everything that's offered at USD, because it is like number 1 or number 2 in study abroad. So lots of options. I think that one thing that was super cool was I studied abroad in Madrid actually beforehand, and different experience in Japan. The culture is just very more to itself, very quiet, very respectful. And I definitely would recommend Tokyo if you're definitely looking for somewhere that's full of all the different like aspects of culture that you want to take, but also very quiet and very tranquil. I would say if I could offer any advice to prospective study abroadies, I guess, is that don't be scared to just have some me time. I know that sounds weird. Like, you don't have to go out with friends to have a good time. I went on long walks for like an hour and I just got lost in the city. And there are some cities that you study abroad in, especially when you have lots of resources, such as your advisor from USD, where you can get lost and you can feel totally safe. My wallet got stolen and I walked into the police station. It was like walking into a bank. It was like 5 minutes. They were super nice, super kind. They led me back to my hotel. It's okay to have those weird experiences and it's okay to do it by yourself.
Thank you, everyone. This was awesome. And just to kind of keep us going, I will actually use some of what AJ just mentioned. I would love to hear from some of you about what it is what was the most interesting thing you learned about the local culture at the location you studied abroad, but also what did you learn about your own culture by living abroad?
I can talk about this one a little bit. So I'll start with what I learned about American culture because that was very prominent. I think what most study abroad programs will tell you when you go abroad is that Americans kind of have a reputation, well, American students, but Americans as well, for maybe like the drinking culture or whatever, what have you. So they prepped us by saying, okay, you guys kind of have a reputation. We want to debunk that. But what I notice is, well, I mean, definitely a lot of American students will just go out and get drunk every night and not necessarily integrate with the culture, but a lot of them are there specifically for the culture. I was one of those. I was like trying to find Italian friends and trying to learn how to make Italian food and trying to learn Italian itself. So definitely American culture is just be self-aware. And then what I learned about Italian culture is, I mean, everything. They're fast-paced. They dress well. That was tough to compete with. It felt like rolling out of bed and putting on sweats every day, but that's not an option. They take their food very seriously, and I'm sure that's a stereotype most people have heard, but like you go to the supermarket every day to buy the food for that day. Like you don't go and buy packaged food to last you a month. And then basically just their line of respect is, I mean, it's like, and I think in America, there's this sort of understanding like respect your elders. And I'm sure that exists to some extent in every country. But I definitely noticed, specifically in Rome, I can't speak for all of Italy, but what I noticed is that it's kind of just this even level, sort of. So the same respect that you're given is what you should give, and you can expect that in most places.
Kind of just to bounce off of what Lexi said, even though I don't have that experience of staying in one area and generally getting to know the culture really, really well, I think my situation was different in that I had to adjust to so many different cultures since I was going to like a new country every week. And like what she said, I think what's really, really important is being self-aware, because you never know what someone's going to take as offense in one country and not in another. And in some countries, it's like very, very nuanced. Like something you probably think doesn't matter at all could mean the world to them, and vice versa. So I think self-awareness is definitely very important. And then I just think that when going abroad, it's important to remember that as an American, you're kind of representing your country when you go somewhere else. So if someone has a bad impression of you, that's probably going to be their impression of America forever. So it's just something to keep in mind when going abroad and staying respectful.
Sorry, can I just add one more thing too? everything plus more that everyone's already said. But also don't feel discouraged. Everywhere you go is going to have a already predisposed perception of an American. I went to a small town in Madrid. We were literally walking and they yelled at my friend who looks very American. I think she was taking a picture or something. I don't know. In Japan, we were just walking and someone asked to take a picture with us. So don't be discouraged. At some point, be respectful of the culture, but just know that there's going to be already predisposed notions of your culture.
That's actually one of my favorite ones is, what do you wish you knew before going abroad? We're always looking for ways to better prepare students, and that seems to be one of those things that we never give enough information. We never really, whether it's logistical items or cultural preparation, there's always a gap. And it's, once you get there, that's when you actually get accustomed and really see for yourself. But I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you wish you knew before going abroad?
I'll jump in here really quick. I think we touched on it a little bit. It's that giving yourself, reminding to have some me time. That's a very exciting, quick paced time where you're studying, learning, exploring, and doing the works. A lot of folks are traveling every weekend or going out. So there's a lot happening during this time. And I think the biggest thing to remember is that it is still your time to be there. So to always take yourself first and take care of yourself, take care of your needs, make sure you're getting sleep, make sure you're eating, and make sure those needs are met. And that'll be okay if you can't go on the trip, or if you go on a trip by yourself. I went on those day walks all the time and just got lost in my neighborhood because I knew I needed those times to myself. So again, remembering that it's your abroad experience, not anyone else's. Everyone else is doing their own thing. They do not care what you're doing, I promise. So you take care of yourself first and try to make your experience what you need it and want it to be more than anything.
Kind of echoing what Sophia said, one of my favorite experiences in Japan was we had just like a free weekend to do what we wanted. And I really wanted to go to this one town, just like a little bit north of Tokyo. And the trip, I think, was going to end up, just with like the train tickets and everything, was a little bit more expensive than my roommate wanted. And he was, like, him and I were pretty close. We did like everything together. And so I was like, oh, okay. And so I took the entire weekend and did the whole trip by myself. It was just like a really neat experience, learning how to, in essence, plan your own trip. I stayed in a hostel, and I met a number of other just like similar aged single travelers there, and like they we just spent like the day with each other because everybody in that hostel was looking for, in essence, people to hang out with. And I'm still in contact with the people I met on this like one small impromptu weekend trip. So I would say don't be afraid to go out of your comfort zone and, in a sense, try new things that I think can seem pretty scary. I know that was a scary thing for me, but it can often, I think, be the most rewarding. The other piece of advice that I would have, or the thing I wish I knew, is you can download Google Maps. You can download a specific section of a map, and then, as long as you have that map downloaded, you can put in any sort of directions within that section of map you have downloaded without using cell reception. And I went to New Zealand, and I decided to set up a little challenge for myself. Money was a bit of an issue for me, or not as much of an issue, but certainly a concern. And so I did not get any sort of SIM card or cell phone plan in New Zealand. I decided, let me try just relying on Wi-Fi, and downloaded Google Maps. And it worked. I didn't spend any extra money on a cell phone plan or anything. Any place I wanted to go, I had my map downloaded. There's generally enough Wi-Fi that you're all right. And if you're hanging out with other people, chances are they'll have a cell phone plan, especially if you make friends with the local Kiwis. So if you do ever get in trouble, you have that. You can also turn on the $10 a day if you do ever are in a situation where you're alone. So again, that's another experience. I was a little uncomfortable trying it. I was like, this could be really bad. It ended up being really rewarding.
I just want to add to that. I think this is a great question because me as a person is such a planner. And I've always just been like an Uber, like go, 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 go kind of person. And so especially for me going to New Zealand by myself, I built up a lot of expectations and planning out, like, okay, well, like I want to like make these types of friends and I want to meet these kinds of peoples and I want to go these places. And I think I built up so much of an expectation that when I got there, it's never going to be like you expect it to be. And you're constantly just going to be thrown for a loop. I feel like my best advice would be forget you're even going until a day before when you need to pack. Well, that maybe like pack like a week before and prepare, but just like forget that you're going and then get on the plane, arrive and just take it minute by minute and soak it all in. And, if people are, and if you're in a place like New Zealand, I mean, relatable to my experience, if there's a group of people that are going camping and you think you can spend a little bit more than 24 hours with them, then say yes and go. Like, I would say just don't overthink things. Never close yourself off to anyone. I met so many people and made so many friends that were so different than friends I had had before. And those relationships brought so much value to me as a person and my life. And I mean, I think abroad, and I feel like everyone says this and it's so cliche, but it is like such a transformative time. And I think you really grow up. But yeah, just don't have expectations. Just get on the plane and go and say yes and meet people and have a good time. Like it's your time to just, I mean, I don't know if the study abroad school might not love me saying this, but it's your time to put academics second, in my opinion, and have fun.
May I offer a counter viewpoint on that? So as somebody who only got 2 months in their study abroad country, which I realize is hopefully not going to be any of you, for me, it was helpful having sort of a rough idea of what I wanted to do each weekend, because it meant that as soon as I got there, I could get started on buying a car to get to all these places and in essence, jumpstart on all the adventures that I wanted. And I knew a lot of people there who were there for those 2 months and ended up kind of just like not doing anything for especially that first month, and ended up really regretting it because, again, they thought they would have 6 months and they only had 2. So like from my perspective, it was helpful to get jump started on all the things that I wanted and know what I did want to do, rather than waiting like 2 months to like get in on buying a car with someone or anything like that. But again, hopefully you all have more than 2 months wherever you go, and you are not in this situation. But just to offer a different viewpoint on that same issue.
I wanted to.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
It was totally different if you had something to lead off. Oh, okay.
No, go ahead.
Is going back to the study abroad advisor question of like what's something I wish I knew. And this may also be a suggestion to the study abroad office, but there will be times, especially during like smaller trips like intersession, where you're gonna have planned like meetings with the entire group. So you have to go on like these trips or these events that they plan for you. Just know that those may happen and they may not always be the most rewarding experience, because unfortunately, from a programmer standpoint, it is super tough to like get so many people together and not make it feel very touristy, like a charter bus going into like a huge market and they have like a tour guide go through. It's just know those times may go, take them as they come, try and get as much out of it, but understand those personal moments where you take it minute by minute. It's okay to freak out every now and then. That's totally normal. Those moments are like going to be the most rewarding for you.
I don't want to drag on the question too long, but I kind of have 2 things that I'd like to offer, I guess, as advice for the Study Abroad Center. One, I know you guys kind of have like an onboarding for financial planning before you go on the trip, like how are you going to afford going to study abroad? But I think something really helpful is talking to people about credit cards and debit cards that are transaction fee less while you're in country, and also applying for credit cards that have travel rewards like the Chase Sapphire or the Bank of America rewards card. because no one ever really talks about that when going abroad, and that can actually save you a lot of money as well. And also telling your banks that you're going to be abroad so they don't freeze your card. That was a huge issue for me. And what was worse was that when I was on a ship, we didn't have Wi-Fi. So if my card got canceled, I literally had no way to tell anyone until I got service or Wi-Fi at my next destination. And it was just like a huge issue. And I had to learn like the hard way from my sister who went abroad before. She was like, make sure you know the status of your accounts at all times. And just to give some recommendations for debit cards that don't have transaction fees, Charles Schwab is great for a debit card that doesn't have transaction fees. And then for credit cards that don't charge you fees for swiping in country is like the Bank of America Rewards one, Chase Sapphire, and also the Discover credit card.
Yeah, I'll add on to that. The Costco, yes, all these cards things, all those financial things, really important to think about. I know Visa, Chase, also debit card. If you are gonna use debit, I got by on debit. I had no transaction fees and transferring over, so that one's also a great option for you if you have saved money and that's what you're going with as well. Also, definitely budgeting. No, that's also study abroad. It's really fun. It's really cool, but budget. It's a very big part of this. So definitely go in mind with how much you're trying to spend on food daily and stuff for yourself. It's always very smart to have in mind.
Thank you, everyone. I think we'll go into the last question for today so we can leave some time for our attendees to ask any questions they might have. And I'll make this a two-part question because I think those are both important elements to touch on. But what did you learn about yourself from that experience? And also, well, I guess I should probably say, how did you deal with homesickness and cultural shock? And then as a follow-up question to that, what did you learn about yourself from studying abroad?
I can go first. I think dealing with culture shock and dealing with homesickness, being at a homestay really helped a lot for me because it was just kind of like another support system there with me. And like I said before, like my homestay family was like cooking us dinner every night and showing us around the neighborhood and telling us like what we should do and stuff like that. So she's just making sure that we knew basically what we were getting ourselves into and like the small little national holidays that we wouldn't know about if we weren't Spanish. So I think that was a great way of dealing with the culture shock and the homesickness because she was basically like a second mom. She always asked us how our day was. She asked us if we made any friends or she asked us about boys all the time, which was really funny. Keeping her updated on that side of life. And then I think what I learned about myself is that I feel like you learn that you are actually really independent and that you can do a lot by yourself. I think being thrown like into a foreign country and kind of having to figure out public transportation if you don't speak the language, how to communicate with those people if you're planning different weekend trips and budgeting and how to get around those countries just for a weekend and things like that. Like you learn how to do so many things on your own that when you come back, like it sounds cliche, but you're like basically a whole new person. Like you're just totally so much more independent. And so that's something that I really learned about myself, that I can actually do a lot of these things by myself, which I wasn't expecting before I went abroad.
So there's something that Ali mentioned, I think it was Ali mentioned, that I definitely agreed with, is like you kind of grow up when you go abroad. Like you do become more independent and like you're kind of forced to see things that are different from your own as positives rather than negatives. And then just like the little things like the transportation, the food, the hours that places are open, because if you want to get food in Rome at 4:00, it's not going to happen. But basically just like, for me personally, a big part of coming back is I learned that I love traveling. Like it doesn't matter where it is. if it's outside of the US, I want to go like anywhere. I went to Switzerland and Greece while I was there. And Switzerland was just one of those places that it was like a cheap trip. And I had 2 friends that were going, and I was like, well, why not? Like, I've never been to Europe before. I might as well go. And it was like by far the best vacation I've ever been on. And it was like 48 hours. So definitely you'll learn what you do and don't like. But when you come across things that are different from your own perspective or an American perspective, just find a way to view them as a positive rather than something that hinders your experience.
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead. No, don't worry. Go ahead.
I'd love to add on to that. And when we all say independence, I think we can agree that that doesn't mean you need to do everything by yourself. It never hurts to ask. I can tell you I can't even count how many times we asked a shop owner, a restaurant owner, literally just somebody walking down the street. People are really nice in other countries. Just ask if there's somewhere you need to figure out because you're in a small town and there's not really great maps that are going to show you like all the shortcuts and stuff. Ask if there's like somewhere you want to eat and you're like, I really want to go to like a really good place. Just ask. People are really nice, and being independent is being able to put yourself out there and not be scared to talk to strangers.
I was just going to say that if you're someone that gets homesick pretty easily, I think semester SC might be a little bit harder of an adjustment just because when you're on the ship, you don't have Wi-Fi or service or data, and you can only contact people via email, which isn't really the best method of communication. For me personally, I'm not someone that gets homesick very often, and oftentimes I find that I'm too busy to be thinking about home, as bad as that may sound, but it's like I'm having fun, so much fun that you kind of forget about people back home. And for semester SE specifically, you're really in your own bubble because no one is having that experience that you are having while in the middle of the ocean alone with other kids. So I find that being preoccupied with those things kept my mind off of things. And then as for things I learned about myself, I think I really learned my personal traveling style. I think when traveling, especially with people you don't really know or you're getting to know, you really figure out what works for you and what doesn't work. And then you learn how to communicate a lot better as well.
Because actually one of my favorite parts about abroad, which ironic because I said something about not maybe academics taking a backseat, but one of the biggest things I learned about myself there is I took one of my first sales courses there, and I was really close with my professor. I went to all of his office hours. We built this great relationship. He ended up writing me a recommendation letter that I used to get the job I'm in now. And it's why I decided to go into sales. So that's like one of those things where expectations wise, I was not expecting that. And so definitely like look for all those different kinds of opportunities, and whether that's networking, that part was really fun for me. And I got to just understand his perspective and his career and what his like business life was in New Zealand, and understand that. And, you know, because it's so much smaller than the United States. And I was always curious about, you know, what's like their trajectory. And so that was just one thing that I learned, and a big thing I learned about myself, which is what I'm doing now. So I don't know if I'd be in sales if I wasn't in New Zealand. So, yeah.
And that was really what I was going to say. And I'm glad that you just brought it up, is that it's all about opportunity is what I learned, is that opportunities are constantly there. I think you learn with that independence, you start to see all these things coming up for yourself. You start to identify what you even view as an opportunity to begin with. You start getting networking, all these different people in your life, all these different perspectives, and it really does help shape what you end up wanting for yourself, not even abroad, but when you come back home, it really stays with you. And I know how far €5 can go. €5 can last me a week, and like how I miss public transportation and all those things. That's separate, I think, from the end point of, I think I really garnered how to take an opportunity, a risk for myself, and how to forgive myself if it didn't work out, if I missed that flight, if I didn't do well on that thing. I learned how to pick myself back up and get home or figure it out either way. So there's always grace in the mistakes here. Like, I think that's huge, that all the mistakes you make abroad are always opportunities as well to move forward and just like keep learning. It's awesome.
I think I would like to wrap it up here so we can have some time for our attendees to ask questions. But thank you so much for sharing your stories and perspectives. You are definitely an inspiration to me and to anyone else who's looking into studying abroad. I'm sure your stories will inspire them. But I know we have a few attendees. If you are able to turn on your camera, that would be great. If not, that's okay. But this is your time to shine and ask any questions you may have. You have some great resources here, students who went abroad themselves. So I would definitely encourage you to pepper them with as many questions as you want.
I have a question about just traveling to, if you wanted to travel to other countries, well, like you're in Europe, for example, with your class schedule, how easy was it for you to like make those trips possible? And did you ever find it hard with your coursework to keep up with that as you're trying to travel to other locations, or if that was like a weekend thing? Yeah, if you could elaborate on that, that'd be great.
I'll just jump in really quick because Spain was specifically different. They had 4 days a week class, so you're off Fridays. So a lot of students had and were encouraged by the faculty to travel and take that opportunity, since we didn't have classes on Fridays, to take advantage of that time. It really does come down to you being responsible and getting work done as well, and make sure you're accommodating your academic needs with those travel plans. But I would say it's 10,000 times easier to travel in Europe than it is in the United States. Also 5,000 times cheaper. Like, you can get from France to Italy for 20 euros. Like, I can't even get to California for that. Like, so definitely take advantage of those prices.
Yeah, to go off on that, I would say your professor probably built in their syllabus an easier workload because they know how much work it's going to be to go out and experience another culture. And that is a lot of work on its own. So not saying disregard your coursework, but saying don't expect it to be as intense as you would probably be set to the standard on campus.
Speaking about Dunedin and New Zealand specifically, I don't really know if this can be generalized or not, but I found well, for starters, to get an A in a class, you only need to get an 80%. So that made it really nice. I would also say that in my experience, the quality of academics expected in Dunedin were a lot lower than at USD. So I did not have to put in nearly as much effort to get the same grades, which meant that my weekends were not taken up by homework, and instead I was able to travel. Now, I did not go to any other countries because New Zealand is 4 hours away from Australia, and that's probably the closest one. But it did allow for time traveling. I'd say the other thing is I'm a biology major, and I took a science class there, and they had enrolled me in a Friday lab, which I really want. And so I just went up and I talked to the person who was in charge of the Friday lab, and I was just like, hey, I'm a study abroad student. Is there any way I could switch sections so that my Fridays were free? And she was like, oh my God, of course, like, you're an international student. We want you to be able to travel. Like, of course we'll switch you. So again, that is just Dunedin. I don't know if that's generalizable, but they were incredibly willing to work with you on that as well, which was really nice.
For me, the professors on the ship at Semester SC were all professors from America also traveling on the program. So it was almost like they were studying abroad too. So sometimes it might be a good or bad thing, but since they also wanted to travel, they were a lot more lenient with the work. And if they were recovering from like a long travel time, they would probably like cancel some assignments that were due, which is really, really cool. But they are super, super flexible and understanding of travel circumstances and the fact that you're abroad and that you're trying to juggle living your best life and also getting an education at the same time. But also for me, I feel like I tried, I was more interested, at least, in the classes I took abroad because they were all directly applied to the countries that I went to. So I would say my motivation for learning was a lot greater, which made the classes a lot more interesting and bearable and tolerable.
Actually, I was going to say, Britney Williams is one of our other study abroad advisors in the International Center, and the question in the chat box would be actually for her, since she's here with us today.
Yes, I love hearing all this. I see so many familiar faces. John, I'm pretty sure I advised for you when I was doing Australia, New Zealand. Ali, great to see you. Let's see here. Vanessa, good to see you as well. And Sophia, we are so lucky you keep coming back to chat with our students. This is amazing. So yes, okay, so Ashika, please correct me if that's wrong. Your question is for the Madrid trip. I'm assuming we're talking about the USD Madrid Center. The lessons would be taught in Spanish. Is English an option? Actually, with the USD Madrid Center, I call it the unicorn of our study abroad programs because it's not like you're transferring to another institution like a lot of our returnees may have. The USD Madrid Center is a USD owned and operated facility in the heart of Madrid, Spain. So we actually rent a full-time facility for our USD students only. It's not a four-year institution like our Dunedin students who are in New Zealand. I see we have a returnee from Japan, France, and Rome, like John Cabot. All of those are other full-time, like four-year universities with their own faculty, their own staff, their own four-year students. The USD Madrid Center is kind of the opposite of that. And because of that, all of our classes are actually taught in English, except for the Spanish courses you may take. While our faculty that are hired at the Madrid Center may be international and English may be their second, third, or fourth language, they all speak English fluently in order to teach. So that is a really great feature of the Madrid Center is you can live and study in Madrid, Spain, but the majority of our courses are taught in English.
All right, thank you. And you did pronounce my name right.
Any other last minute questions? We only have a couple of minutes left and I definitely want to be respectful of everyone's time. Well then, once again, thank you so much to our panelists for being here and sharing their stories. It really means a lot and we always love to hear about your guys' experience and how studying abroad allowed you to grow and, personally and academically. And we love to see you come and talk with our future study abroad students. So thank you again so much. And to attendees as well, if you're looking into studying abroad or if you already have an application with us, we definitely look forward to supporting you through the process and know that we're here for you as a resource. Feel free to reach out with any questions, any concerns. We're happy to chat with you about anything. But yeah, that kind of ends the formal part of our presentation today. Thank you again so much. And we hope to see you around campus soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye, thank you.